Welcome everybody to the Winter 15 webinar, overview and highlights of this exciting release. Very excited for it. So let's get started here. First, our speakers. We have Skip Sauls, who's the product manager. He is joining us from San Francisco, and Peter Chittum, developer evangelist, all the way across the pond from London, and myself, Mike Gerholdt, admin evangelist. I am joining you from the Heartland. I mentioned our locations because we are going to be switching presenters throughout this webinar. So if there's a little glitch or a little stall, please be patient with us while we switch screens. So that's who you will be hearing from today. Exciting stuff. So, of course, we have to have a safe harbor. We will be talking about some really cool forward-looking features, but please do make all your purchase decisions based on current functionality. And if you'd like, over your lunch hour, you can read this entire slide by going to Salesforce.com and searching on Safe Harbor. That being said, we are social, so of course this webinar is going to be recorded, and the nice thing about it is you can find the recap page at the same URL you used to register, and it'll be posted on YouTube. If you're on Twitter, you can follow us at Salesforce Devs, and I highly recommend, if you're watching it right now, to use the hashtag #ForceWebinar to let all of your friends know that you're sitting in on some exciting news that they could be missing out. And of course, if you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Google+, we are there as well at Salesforce Developers. So please connect with us. We'd love to answer your questions. With that being said, I bet you've got a lot. So please don't wait until the end to ask your questions. We have a lot of people patiently sitting by waiting to answer them. We also do have a lot of people on this webinar, so the queue could be quite long. Please take a second to look and see what questions your fellow attendees are asking, and please don't repeat them. We're going to do our absolute best to work through the queue during the webinar and after the webinar to make sure that we get all the questions answered. And then, of course, stick around for the end. The very end of a webinar is the best part because it's where we do our live Q&A. So if you want to stump us, that would be the time to. And of course, if you didn't get your question answered or asked during either the Q&A or during the webinar, you can always head over to the developer forums at developer.salesforce.com/forums. There's a lot of smart people out there that can help you out. So let's get started. I want to introduce Skip Sauls, product manager, to talk about Lightning components.
Okay, thanks, Mike. If you could make me presenter. Again, my name is Skip Sauls. I'm a director of product management here at Salesforce. I'm responsible for some products known as Lightning components, Lightning extensions, Aura framework, and Visualforce. And I'm going to talk to you today about an exciting new technology called Lightning components that we just introduced prior to Dreamforce, actually right before it as part of a beta. So let me give you a quick overview, and then I'm going to show you a slide or two, but most of this is going to be focused on real demos. As Mike mentioned, some of this is forward-looking. It's things that are coming in subsequent releases. So keep that in mind, that what you see when you're actually using things in the beta today may not be available to you depending on which pilots and so forth that you're enrolled in. So what is Lightning Components? It's a component framework for building user interfaces, for building applications. Sometimes it's confused with mobile frameworks and MVC frameworks. It does have some similarities to those, some crossover, but don't confuse this with, simply taking something like Angular, Polymer, etc., and hosting it inside of SFDC Core and serving it up inside of a page. It's a very different technology. If you've been using the Salesforce1 Mobile App, whether you're using it on your desktop or using it on a phone, Android, iOS, etc., you've been using Lightning Components now for about a year. Those applications are built up of Lightning components. So it's a new technology in the sense that it's available to you now to actually use it yourself, but it's not new for Salesforce. We've been working on this for quite a while. If you've used the search feature in Setup, if you've used other parts of Setup, some of the screens now are all Lightning component based. If you've used things like opportunity splits, that's a Lightning component. Even the features in Visualforce for doing the analytics charting, those are actually Lightning components. So you've been using it and seen it in some ways. You just probably didn't know it because it wasn't bubbled up and exposed as a product offering. It is based on something called the R framework. You may be familiar with this from previous webinars, from previous Dreamforces. We've open sourced that a little over a year ago, and it's the core framework that we build everything off of. Just so you know, though, if you go and use the open source framework on your local host or on Heroku, AWS, etc., if you're using it on something externally, it's not the same thing as Lightning Components. Our framework itself does not have any real strong ties to SFDC data and so forth. It has Java-based controllers, it has components, has the core framework, but it doesn't really have any notion of security, installation, packaging, versioning, Apex support, all the things you'd expect when running on force.com. So don't make the assumption that it's just that package installed inside of SFDC core. Again, we're fully integrated. We actually have a lot of people who have worked on technologies such as Visualforce and Apex and others working on Lightning Components now. So a lot of the things you're familiar with in terms of, again, versioning, packaging, installation, and so forth are all supported. We're rapidly approaching parity with Visualforce in terms of ease of use for tags and that sort of thing. And we'll go beyond what you see in Visualforce in terms of features and functionality, tooling, and that sort of thing. So lots of really cool things coming for it. It is available in beta. What this means is you can use it today. You turn on a pref in your org. It's only on Winter 15, so you need to have a Winter 15 org. And an important note is you need to have a DE org if you want to do development. You cannot do development currently on other orgs because it requires a namespace. And this is a limitation that will be relaxed in the upcoming Spring 15 release. It's just a limitation right now. So you can deploy onto other orgs, other licenses, but you need to develop on a DE org. And again, the namespace will be replaced with the standard default namespace, the C notation that you're familiar with from Visualforce. Okay. Next slide. Let's go to a demo. So I'm going to switch over here to my browser, and I'm going to show you a few things that are inside of both the desktop, inside of Setup. I'm going to show you one of the really cool tools that we have available, and then also show you things running inside of Salesforce1. So to start in Setup, if you're on, again, Winter 15, you'll notice it by the little, what I call the Kenny character. It's the little ice fisher guy. And if you go down to Develop, you'll now see something new called Lightning Components Beta. Select that, and what you'll get is a screen that has a checkbox that you can enable. And by default, you would see just a checkbox. You turn that on, and you can see checkboxes for debug mode. You won't have this list of components by default inside there. We don't ship with a bunch of components other than the default namespace pieces. What you're seeing in this list are things that I have either developed or have installed from partners, and more on that in just a second, because this is where it gets really exciting. We are rapidly approaching having all these things on App Exchange. There's some really interesting things in store for that. We expect to have a number of components available to you, when we go into the GA over the next couple of releases. So look for lots of cool things, both from Salesforce as well as from our partners. And it's the partner piece that I'm really most excited by. And to give you an example of why, I'm going to open the Lightning App Builder. This is not something you'll see in every Winter 15 org. This is part of a pilot. If you're interested in this, talk to your TSE, your SE, or other representative, and they can try to get you enrolled in that. But once you have Lightning App Builder, you can actually see some really interesting new features. And an important note here is that App Builder itself is built with the Lightning components. So as I mentioned, all new UI initiatives are built on top of Lightning components. So you're going to see it all throughout there. And if you're a developer, especially if you're a partner, you might want to get on board as early as possible, because once we hit the GA and people start to roll this out in production, I think there's going to be a strong demand for lots of components. And we're hoping to have an entire ecosystem of components out there so people can do things that are both specific to SFDC as well as general purpose. So let's go ahead and create a new page. We'll call this webinar, like so. And again, important note, everything you see here is built with Lightning components. So all the technologies here are Lightning components. Now, if you get into the pilot, you'll get a smaller set of icons here on the left. We ship with, I think, 5 of them out of the box. Things like rich text, report charts, there's the filter list, and the Visualforce page. So we ship with a small set. I've actually installed several components here built by our partners. We ran a pilot over the course of the last summer with about 54 ISV partners and another dozen or so MVPs and a couple of SIs, as well as a number of internal Salesforce employees. And they built some really amazing things to the point where we went to Dreamforce knowing we didn't have to go build a lot of cool demo content. We could actually show what the partners have built. One of the coolest ones, let's bring up a PlumSoft component. PlumSoft is an ISV partner out of India who's building an ERP solution on top of Salesforce. And they are taking some of the UI elements from, I think it's Telerik Kendo is the right name, and they've used those inside of Lightning Components. And this is an important thing to note. You don't have to build everything inside of SFDC. This is not a closed technology. It's not something where you use just our markup. It's very open-ended. You can use third-party libraries. You're basically writing JavaScript, HTML, CSS on the client side. You have an XHTML markup for components that is the underpinning. So it's very similar to what you might see in Visualforce. But everything client-side is just pure web technologies. We make connections back to Apex controllers. It's very familiar in that sense. But it's important to note that this is built so that it's very approachable by somebody who knows web technologies, who wants to get to SFDC data. On the flip side, if you're familiar with SFDC technologies already, if you already know Visualforce, Apex, and that sort of thing, it'll be very familiar as well. So you may have to learn JavaScript if you don't know that, but that's kind of the way the world has gone. And we know a lot of Visualforce developers are already doing JavaScript-based pages and so forth. They're already using third-party libraries. Let's throw in another one here just to show some different things. This is from the Taz Group, a company out of Ireland that has done some really cool things that enhance the CRM features inside of Salesforce. So they actually take your opportunity data and look at your contacts and build up something they call the frenemies list. So they look at what goes on in your account, and this gives a sales guy the ability to say, who should I talk to, who should I watch out for when I go into meetings and that sort of thing. So we see that Clara and Mitch are nice people. Charles is obviously very evil. As you can see here, you've got to watch out. And Patty is neutral, but she's got a lot of yellow bars there. So again, if you know the CRM world, this could be very useful for somebody in the field. Now, it's important to note that this is building something called a Flexi page, which you can then use inside of Salesforce1. And this technology is going to underpin the way that declarative admins utilize Lightning components. So a declarative admin, click admin, if you want to think of it that way, will be able to drag and drop components. There will eventually be a button somewhere, probably down here, that says go to App Exchange and open up a window inside of the app builder to download and install more components. So you can install free ones, you can purchase them, and that sort of thing. So it's meant to be something very easy, very approachable. For each of these components, you can define the attributes that get configured, and there's a layer that isolates the declarative admin view from the programmatic view. So the programmatic view might have 10 attributes that you set, very low level. They're strongly typed, much like Java. You can set those to configure things. For the declarative user, the declarative programmer, click admin type, you can isolate those and say expose only the attributes that make sense in that kind of clickable environment. And there's a lot of things that we'll be working on to make them sort of context aware. So as you drop a component into a particular part of Salesforce1, it'll pick up and behave correctly. So again, something very cool. Look for this to be updated and improved over the next few releases, and it'll become a way to both use these components and, again, show them off as we see here. But all the components were built by programmatic devs. They used the developer console. They created new components. They started out in much the same way you would. We gave them all, hello world tutorials and that sort of thing. And it was astonishing how fast some of them picked it up and ran with it, including PlumSoft, which did not come from a strong Force.com background. They kind of came to the platform, whereas others had a strong Force.com background already. So I think it proves out that the technology itself is ready for partners, especially to build new and interesting components that add value on top of Salesforce. One more quick part of the demo. I'll run this in the emulator here. So we're looking at Salesforce1, emulating an iPhone 6 in this case. And I want to show you something called Lightning Extensions that's complementary to Lightning components and show you how this all kind of fits together. So we're looking at the opportunities page, and we chose it from stage left here. And let's pick one of these opportunities. I love Burlington Textiles. I seem to use that all the time. And you'll see this screen here that popped up. And if you've seen this screen over and over again, you might notice that a big change is in the newer versions of Salesforce1, you have actual tabs with titles as opposed to the dots. So that's a little usability feature. And there's now an action bar at the bottom, which replaces the little MVP icon. So there's actually some usability improvements. What you may not fully appreciate is that this chart here is not from Salesforce. This is from a third party. So this uses a technology called Lightning Extensions, and it allows you to use, let's call them pivot points, to dictate which areas to inject your particular components. So you can say for opportunities and for the probability field, based upon the full layout in view mode, use my component instead of the default component. And that's a very important feature because you don't see this sort of thing in most toolkits. And we're changing the way we want people to use our technology. Instead of saying start over again in Visualforce and rewrite your own page to do something simple, we give you the ability to impact the UI in very significant ways. Similar to this, let's go to the edit mode. And in here, we've got the amount field. And if we click on the amount, normally you would get a text edit cursor. You would type inside there and get the value change. But now you get this cool little component from Clarisoft. Again, another one of our partners that has done some really cool things here. So you get a numeric keypad entry. You can change the value here, clear it out, edit it, and that sort of thing. So let's just put in a different value. And notice here that it changed the value here. And when we save this, it's being saved by Salesforce 1. The person writing that component did not have to go off and write a bunch of Apex code or other code or REST code. It's all done via data binding. So you're binding to the data object, to the record, getting it updated that way. So again, a very cool way for you to extend, enhance, and override our UI or any UI. This can be applied to custom applications as well. If it's not obvious, one.app that you're seeing here is also Lightning component based. It's a Lightning application, just like the app builder, just like your custom apps. So a lot of really cool things there. We do have other types of plugins or extensions. We're going to show these here. Just be forewarned that these may not make it into GA because we have the notion of tabs in the current UI. This sort of thing may change over time so that tabs are not being used in the same way. But in this case, it's kind of cool to show because that same component we saw in the app builder is being shown here inside of Salesforce 1. All right, just another couple of quick slides and I'll wrap up here. So let's go back to slide mode. Again, just to reiterate, you can turn this on inside of your org. When you open the dev console, you'll see new Lightning component, new Lightning application, that sort of thing. If you want to learn about it, I would encourage you to go to developer.salesforce.com. There's links there under the Lightning tab for lots of really cool and interesting. There's books available as PDFs. There's actually some quick start guides. There's tutorials. You can see here a picture of the book itself that was actually printed for Dreamforce. So a lot of really interesting ways to do it. There's also a growing community on developer.salesforce.com as well as on things like the Force Stack Exchange. So and if you want to get involved with pilots like Lightning Extensions, Lightning App Builder, again, contact your TSE, SE, or other Salesforce representative. With that, I'll hand it back over to Mike, and I'd like to thank you very much.
Great, Skip. And we're getting a lot of questions about when some of the Lightning will go GA. So I think right now it's in beta, and you can submit a case to Salesforce support. Am I correct, Skip?
Sorry, 1 second.
It's okay. If you want to make Peter the presenter, we'll actually, this is my throw to Peter all the way across the pond. I'm like Superman.
I'm already presenter, so I'm all set to go.
Great.
We just need to make
At least I thought I was.
You are now.
All right. Very good. So thanks a lot, Mike, and thanks, Skip. With all of those very cool things that are now available, I can't wait to see that. But at the same time, I sort of feel like I'm kind of coming second fiddle. But hopefully some of these cool features for Winter 15 will excite some of you. A lot of things going on, so I'm going to do a big survey of a bunch of stuff, but I'm just going to focus my demo on a couple of features here. New Apex updates, things like there's some new async features. The Qubel interface is available. We've increased the number of future method calls and callouts available to you. We've increased the number of tests. We've doubled the number of tests that you're able to run now. There's some improved methods for invoking the approval processes. And then the Connect API is the thing I want to focus on. Connect API is the namespace for Apex classes that allow you to access the chatter functionality. One cool feature is recommendations, where you can take a particular feed post and then get recommendations based on that feed post. The one I want to focus on is something called batch posting. So let's go take a look at that really quickly. So I'm just going to show you what I mean by this, and that's so if I wanted to have a trigger that was going to invoke a post to chatter piece of functionality, in the past there was a little bit of a problem with being able to use the bulk mechanisms of a trigger with the Connect API, which allowed you to do rich posts to chatter. So, for instance, here I have this opportunity, and I'm going to go in and I reset this, and then I tested it. There we go. So let me set that back to where it's going to go. So if I change this from negotiation and review to closed one, that's going to trigger a little chatter post. And if I go in to take a look at chatter, I'll see, there we go. So there is my chatter post that was generated by that. And the important thing here is that this is a rich chatter post. In other words, we have things like hashtags and @mentions going to actual users and that sort of thing. So if we go to actually look at the code for this, I'll show you some of the problems that we had in the past where, so this is an example of a different Connect API chatter method that I wrote. And in this, so I've got a rich text body with some hashtags. I've got a file attachment that's being generated by that. But the problem was that when I actually went to generate this post, I could only do one feed item at a time. And so this method here didn't support the ability that triggers expect, which is to do things in bulk, in other words, with lists of data. The alternative would be something like this, where I could do the actual S object for a feed item, which is called feed item, and I could generate a bunch of those and then simply go and save those. The problem is that my body was text only, so all I could do is kind of throw some text in there. So the way that it now works in the new Connect API functionality is that there is this class called batch input. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate a whole bunch of batch input instances here. And the cool thing is that my body can actually be that rich chatter body. So I can go in there, I can actually have @mentions, which I can't do in a text-based post. I could do file content, which I actually didn't do in this particular example. And where you can see that I've done that is just down here, where there is my @mention segment. So the way that the Connect API works for a chatter text post is you generate a whole bunch of segments, you stick that into a list, and then that basically becomes your body. So that @mention there was a thing that was not really possible. So that's a nice, cool feature. It adds some additional functionality to what we used to be able to do. So there we go. So let's take a look at the next feature I want to focus on. And that's something called Lightning Connect. So Lightning is the Lightning Components feature and Lightning Extensions. It's also a set of branding that is going to be surrounding a bunch of platform features now. And Lightning Connect is actually using something called the Open Data Protocol, or OData. This is basically an integration architecture where I have my user that's going to be accessing some Salesforce functionality, and they'll go and access some data either from an on-premise database or maybe some other cloud. They then get that back, and this is all done using integration, but the nice thing is that there's no code on the integration side over here. We're not storing any data inside of Salesforce. But the way that the actual data gets surfaced is as an S object. So using the same APIs that we're used to, being able to write things like SOCL and SOCL and access list views and create tabs for that data. So this is something completely different from what we've had before in the integration world. So as I said, new way to integrate. It supports Open Data Protocol, specifically OData 2.0. Currently, OData 4.0 is the standard, and that is in the roadmap. If you have some non-OData data source, you can also write a custom Apex connector. And again, like I said, nice thing is you can use SOCL, list views, relationships, that sort of thing, and all of the data is stored in the external system, so you're not actually using up any of your Salesforce data storage capacity. So let's go take a look at how that works. Now, I'm down here under the Develop menu, looking at something called External Data Sources. So I pre-configured this data source, and I should say that this is a fairly simple data source. This is actually one of the sample data sources in the OData project. And so I've configured the server URL for that. The format is either going to be Atom or JSON. And normally, of course, this being enterprise integration, we'd have some means of establishing the identity of Salesforce to the external system and vice versa. Again, this is just kind of a sample data source, so no need to do that. We just have anonymous. Now, the cool thing is when I click on Validate and Sync, it's actually going to go out to that OData data source. It's going to read some metadata and tell me what kind of tables are available to go and get data from. So I might select things like products and orders and categories. And when I click on Sync, it's actually going to read that metadata and automatically generate some Salesforce objects for me. There we go. Now, if I scroll down, you can see that I actually have 3 new S objects. Although they're not really S objects the way we think of them. This is actually not storing any data inside of Salesforce. But the cool thing is, if I drill down on one of these, like products, it looks and it behaves a lot like all of the other S objects that we're used to in the Salesforce system. So it has an API name, just like every other Salesforce object does. So product __ X is a little bit different, and obviously that distinguishes it from a normal Salesforce object. We don't have the same standard fields either. There's an external ID field. And we can see certain custom fields that have been created as well. And once I have this, I can simply go and look at querying it. So I'm going to go back here. I actually had pre-done that query. We'll click on Refresh Grid, and let's see what comes back. There we go. So I wrote a basic query using SOCL from my product X S object. I'm using a where clause, I'm using an order by clause, and I can actually see that data available here. But it's more than just available to SOCL. So I can also go and create a custom tab for this. If I go down to Create, Tabs, and I'll do New Custom Object tab. I'll go and find that products object I just created, pick my tab style. So just like I'm doing a normal Salesforce object, click on Next, and we'll just go through this wizard and finish that off. When I'm done, there's my products tab. It even gives me a list view to go and retrieve the data, and it's not really pretty, but of course I can go and customize like that just like I would normally do with a list view. So I'll click on Edit, and we'll go and grab things like product name, unit price, units in stock, grab a few fields. We'll go ahead and save that list view. And there we go. So there's my working list of data coming from this external system. So the thing that blew me away when I first saw this is I'm doing integration, but I'm doing it declaratively. Provided my endpoint, my external data source supports the OData protocol and has the ability to do authentication. It's a very straightforward integration option now, and much, much easier than anything we've ever had in the past. Super cool. When I showed that to Mike in our dry run, I think he said he had to pick himself up off the floor. So there we go. So let me just throw out a few other features, and I'll then pass this on to Mike again. So another feature that I think is really cool is the event log object. Now, currently, this is an API that's been surfaced, but I think we're going to see a whole lot of cool new features come out from this, because what we've done here is we've actually surfaced events that happen in Salesforce. And what do I mean by an event? Well, exporting a report, that could be an example of an event. Doing a content transfer could be an example of an event. Having a user adopt the Salesforce1 Mobile application, those are all events that get logged to the event log object. And once it's in the event log object, you can actually go and you can find out how are my users using my Salesforce org. So really powerful things I expect to come from that event log object feature. A lot of the things that have been added to the Connect API have also been added to the Chatter REST API. Those things tend to develop in tandem. Essentially, the Connect API is the surfacing of the REST API into Apex, so those things tend to happen that way. The Visualforce remote objects has now gone GA, so when you are building Visualforce pages, when you're not busy building Lightning components now, you do have some additional options for interacting with your Salesforce org with JavaScript. And one thing that caught my eye at the very last page of the release notes is that person accounts are now packageable. I know person accounts have been kind of a pain point for a lot of integrations and a lot of ISV applications. So the fact that you can now package them, I think, will open up some doors to a lot of people. And one last thing, Force.com IDE is open source. So if you don't like how it works, go contribute. Make a change, make a pull request, and you start making that IDE behave the way that you want it to. Thanks very much.
That was awesome, Peter. All right, so I guess you played second fiddle, I played third fiddle. If there's a third fiddle, that's what I'm playing. So yay, we're showing Winter 15 for admins, and I will show my screen here in a second. Okay. All right, perfect. Look at that, third transition, and I think we're going to make it through this webinar. So Winter 15 for admins. The first tip I wanted to give admins was reading the release notes. This is actually a tip I can't take credit for. I attended the Wisconsin user group, and Salesforce MVP, Andy Oganoff, gave these tips to me. So the first one I want to point out, and this goes for developers too, 343 pages. That's a Harry Potter book, and we put 3 of them out a year. So that's kind of a lot, and that's kind of a lot to get through. So here's the tips that Andy gave on how to get through all of those pages. First one is you need 2 highlighters, one green and one pink. I'd say a red highlighter, but it usually just looks pink. So you need 2 highlighters, one green, one pink, and then we're going to print the release notes once, but we're going to read them twice. So why are we going to do that? The first thing is we're going to learn how to click so it advances the slide. There we go. We're going to read through the release notes and highlight everything in green that is automatically turned on or something that could potentially impact a business process. So anything that's new that comes out, we want to highlight that in green. We want to start having those conversations right away. And the second time we read through it, we want to highlight anything that's in pink. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to demo and a lot of the stuff that Skip demoed as well is in beta. That would be stuff I would highlight in pink and say, hey, let's have a conversation about this. Let's see if I need to contact Salesforce support and get in on the beta, or maybe we move ahead and it's something we can reevaluate when it goes to GA. So I like to put the term out, focus on green and plan for pink. And then lastly, the release note spotlights, we'll put the link in the chat and when we post this video. Release note spotlights are your friends. Release note spotlights to me are kind of like the movie trailer of what's coming soon. So here's all of the really cool things without going through the 343 pages, and then that way you can kind of like fine tune in on what you need to look for. So with that being said, let's talk about some of the really cool things we're going to hone in on. The first one, Salesforce1 setup menu. So this is brand new in Winter 15. I love this. This is phenomenal. This allows you to easily configure everything in your org for Salesforce1, so you don't have to hunt around, and it's all very declarative friendly too. So you can specify which items appear in the navigation menu. You can organize your global actions and create a custom compact layout for contacts. I think this is just phenomenal. If you listen to the Button Click Admin podcast today, you'll hear Jillian say Salesforce admins live in the setup menu, and I think having Salesforce1 setup in that menu proves the point. So with that, let's see how good of a demoer I am. Demoer, is that a term? We're going to use it as a term. So here I'm in my developer org, and I just clicked on setup, and I went to my Salesforce1 setup menu, and you'll see it's got the brand new bug next to it. So we've got this really nice page here, and we've got this big blue button in the middle, Launch Quick Start Wizard. So if you've been afraid to press it, I'm going to do it for you. And we're going to walk through this wizard because I think it helps us set up Salesforce1 so that our users are mobile friendly and successful. So the first part, we get the nice little iPhone picture here. Let's get started. We're going to customize our navigation menu. So the navigation menu is when they swipe left, and we can actually set it up to show what items we want in a certain order. Now, management came to me and said, you know what, it's very important that we have dashboards towards the top. So you saw all I did was click and drag dashboards to the top. I didn't deploy any code, and everything's already set there. And they said, you know, it'd be really cool if we had like some smart search. So I have this smart search available in my items, and all I have to do is click and drag it over and just drop it right in. There we go. And drop it right in. So now my feed is at the top. I've got smart search items next, and I got my dashboard right after that. So this is good. This is a good start, and that's what management asked for. So I'm going to click Save and Next. And on this page, we're taken to arranging our global actions. So from here, we can arrange any global actions, which come from the little Publisher menu. So management told me post is good, and we create a lot of new contacts on our mobile device. That's pretty great. And we really want log a call higher. So not going to write any code. All I'm going to do is drag log a call above file. And now log a call is right below contact. And they said, you know, that new notes feature in Salesforce1 is pretty awesome, and we want our salespeople to do that. So let's make it real easy, and let's drag that over and put that underneath log a call. So now the publisher actions, those top 4, are the 4 that they're using the most. And this is really easy to reconfigure. Maybe you don't want users creating new accounts on their phone, so we'll just take that off there. And now it's a little bit tighter of a publisher action over here. So I'm going to click Save and Next. Here's the really great part. So compact layouts, right? We know there's a lot of information that Salesforce has available. When we're on the phone, we want to make sure that we're serving up just that tidbit of information that they need on the fly so they can read it really quickly. So I can create a compact layout. Here we've got our suggested layout, and you know, I was talking to the salespeople, and they said, you know, it's really great when I pull up a contact, but I'd love to know who the owner is. So I'm just going to drag that, and I'm going to put owner over in that menu, and now contact owner is right at the top, so they can see the contact's name and the contact owner. And I didn't have to write any code to do that. It's pretty awesome. So I'm going to click Save and Next. And much like when we're shopping online, we're presented with a review menu. So we can see here our feed, and we've got our dashboards towards the top. We've got our global actions, how we configured them. They wanted log a call towards the top. That's great. And our compact layout shows up, and we can see that we've got contact owner. So everything's set, and I'm going to click Next. Now this is the best part. This is where you can just jumpstart Salesforce1 adoption in your org. You can email all of your users and let them know that you configured Salesforce1 to look epic, and you're ready for them to use it. So I can just click Send All Users and click Send. And boom, we're on our way. So what happens when I click Next? Very simply, I'm taken back to that Quick Start menu. In a second. Demo fail. Okay. Happy days. So I click Next. Taken back here. Last thing I want to point out is customizing parts of the app. So when it launches, branding it is very important. It's really cool that you can make our app look exactly like your company. So if you wanted to change any of the colors or the logos, we give you a huge palette so you can change the brand color, you can change the loading page color, you can add your logo, and you can even change the publisher icon. So that way people aren't clicking on the Salesforce logo and seeing Salesforce icon load, they're seeing your company's logo load. So, and that's very quick and easy to do in the Salesforce1 setup menu. So let me get that demo screen out of the way. Go back into presentation mode. All right. The next one, this one's huge. It was the #2 idea on the Idea Exchange for just about the entire time I've been a Salesforce admin, and it's the data.com duplicate management. So this allows you to keep your data clean and your users happy, and it lets you prevent data entry on accounts, leads, and contacts. So you can't create dupes that way. The SIM beta, as with much of the Lightning components that you saw with Skips. So let's take a look at what data.com duplicate management looks like. All right, first thing I'm going to do, pull up my org and get in the right org. All right, so my org has been enabled in the beta version. And on the left-hand side of the setup menu, we have this new data.com administration. And this allows us to set up our duplicate management. So the first thing we're going to set up, and I was thankful that Leanne Templeman helped me set this up because she is the queen of all demos. She built some matching rules for me. So you want to build a matching rule, and it's much like building a workflow rule. This is the criteria to say what's going to match, and then we're going to say under duplicate rules what happens. So she built a contact duplicate matching rule for me, and we'll take a look at it. And it's basically that the first name has to be exact, the last name has to be exact, and the email has to match. That's what we're going to define as a match on contacts. So for that, she created a duplicate rule under contacts. I'll pull that up for. Okay, so we've got 2. And our first one I'll just dive into is our contact duplicate rule. So this is what's going to happen, right? So we already defined our matching rule criteria. First name, last name has to match exactly, and email. But now what happens? So what's the rule? Well, our rule says we're going to, on create, we're going to block it, and on edit, we're going to block it, and we're going to give text saying you're creating a duplicate record. We recommend you use an existing record instead. So I built this rule, everything's in place, and I'm all set. And then I was at a conference a while back. I don't know if you've heard of it. It was Dreamforce, and I happened to run into a very important person there named Mark Benioff. So being a good system admin, I put him in Salesforce so that we can start tracking him. But unbeknownst to me, my CEO is actually meeting with Mark. My CEO is trying really hard to use Salesforce1, so he pulls out his Salesforce1, pulls out his iPhone, and he opens up Salesforce1, and he's getting ready to walk in. He's thinking, I should put Mark in as a new contact so that I can log the call that I had a meeting with Mark. So he presses the plus, and he creates a new contact. So standing there, waiting for the elevator to go up, and types in first name, last name, and of course we know his email, ceo@salesforce.com. And my executive is happy. Click submit. And because we have data.com duplicate management in place, it says, hey, we already have a Mark Benioff in your system, and now my executive can just go exactly to his contact record. We didn't create a duplicate, and everything in our data is clean, so he can go right into the meeting and see that what's going on with Mark. So that is the data.com duplicate management. If you want that enabled in beta, you have to submit a support case. Last slide. Dun, dun, dun. We started with Lightning, so we'll end with Lightning. Lightning Process Builder. This one's very cool. This is probably one of my top features for the Winter 15 release as an admin. This allows us to clean up our workflow rules and build some really amazing processes. So it's got a nice visual canvas, which means we can see everything, and we can add actions, we can create records, we can create chatter posts. And I'm sorry, Peter, but just because you can write code to create a chatter post, I can use Lightning Process Builder to create a chatter post. So with that, let's take a look at what Lightning Process Builder looks like.
My code is obsolete.
Your code is obsolete. I'm sorry. So many orgs open. Isn't it fun? All right. So the first thing I want to show you is in my org, you know, of course I've got a whole bunch of workflow rules and wasn't exactly tidy when I created them. So I bet these workflow rules probably look like yours. You go in there and the executive asks you, what's going on with all these workflow rules? What happens when? And I wasn't really good at naming them, so I don't know outside of clicking through all these what happens next on an opportunity, right? What's the first stage, what's the second stage, and what's the third stage, and how do these workflows work together? But with Lightning Process Builder, I can show you it is so much easier. So it's found under the same setup menu under Workflow and Approvals. We have a new one called Processes, and this actually opens up in a nice little easy-to-read menu. And this is my sales process, right? So I'm working on cleaning up my sales process. This is the same process that all those cluttery workflows were, except here, I'll make this bigger just in case. Here I can see it starts with my opportunity object. Stage one, oh, here's my criteria. And when the opportunity stage equals this, I change the value to prospecting. Perfect. So what's the action? Well, the action is to update the record type. As you can see now, everything's organized. I've got a qualification stage, I've got a needs analysis stage, I've got a value proposition stage, and all the related actions. I can just click through and see what happens. So as I'm demoing this for the executive tells me, boy, closed one, that's pretty great. What happens at closed one? I changed the record type to closed one. And he said, well, we've got a sales group. Let's post to chatter. So I can do that. So I'm going to click Add in Action, and I'm going to choose a type, Post to Chatter. I'm going to call the action name High Five, because this is when we're winning an opportunity. I'm going to say Post to a chatter group, and he told me there's a sales group that we're going to post to, and there it is. Here I can mention a user, just like Peter talked about in his code. I could even add a topic, so I'm going to add a topic, hashtag High Five. If I could type. And then this is the cool part. I can actually say what that chatter post should be. And I'm going to put, I just closed this. And now, because we have all this related information, I can pull in maybe account ID or amount. I just closed this opportunity for X amount. And now, all I have to do is press save. So with that, I didn't write any code, and I immediately created a new chatter post on the closed one. And of course, the really cool thing is the executive says, well, we've got an implementation plan. So could it create a record? Absolutely. So I'm going to create a record, and I'm going to call it Create implementation plan. And my object is my implementation plan object. So there it is. Type of field, name. And here I can put the value, new implementation plan. And of course, if I had more fields that I wanted to pre-populate, I could do that right now. I just want to name it and create the record so that my implementation team immediately can start working on the sale after an opportunity is closed, and I press save. So now I didn't deploy a single line of code, and I have a new chatter post going out when an opportunity is won, and I have a new record being created on a related implementation plan object. Winter 15, awesome stuff. So with that, I'm going to go back to the slides, and I'm going to remind you to join us at the Salesforce World Tour Developer Zone or the Admin Zone. There's also an Admin Zone in New York. Wednesday, November 19th, you can register at sforce.co, and then all the rest of those letters. Or Peter, don't you have something coming up? So Peter has the Elevate Developer Workshop, which is in London on December 5th. You can register early. Seating will be limited. It's an easier URL to remember. It's bit.ly/elevate-London.
Yeah, and sorry, I had put myself on mute. I thought I was giving a great pitch, and but you did a great job for me there, Mike. Yeah, so come on down. It's going to be a full-day event. We'll have 3 tracks. There will be a beginner track, there will be an Apex and programming track, and there will also be a Heroku track. So come check that out, please.
Perfect. And as promised, of course, we want to hear your feedback. So thank you for spending your lunchtime or your evening or your morning with us. bit.ly/winner_survey, winner15_survey. Let us know how we did. Don't ding us on the transitions, please. But we did promise a Q&A, so we are delivering on that promise.
So I'm happy to step up with one that I saw. There's a question about how does the Lightning Connect affect API limits? And I did post the answer out there, but the API limits are fundamentally for calls that are inbound to Salesforce as a data provider. With Lightning Connect, the data provider is another system that's outside of Salesforce, but there are limits. There are limits to the number of external objects you can have. There are rate limits that will be in place. But best to check the documentation because there are a couple of different configurations. For instance, there's an option that you can choose for large data volumes, but if you turn that on, you can't access Lightning Connect via the Salesforce1 Mobile application. So hopefully that answers that question.
I'm seeing a few questions coming in about the New York event. If you go to the URL we gave you, and we'll post that, I'm sure, everywhere, and if you Google Salesforce1 Tour New York, there'll be information there. The agenda is forthcoming. So. And there's a few questions I'm seeing about when Lightning Process Builder and Lightning App Builder will be available. So I'll kick that to Skip if he has it. I know right now it's in beta.
Yeah, safe harbor. I don't believe you'll see those in GA for spring 15, maybe in a subsequent release. So we don't really give out actual dates. That's just kind of giving you a hint as to what you might expect. And they may go beta with one or both of those as opposed to just pilots as well. So you can maybe have that as before they actually go GA.
Yeah, I think with Lightning Process Builder, my advice, especially as an admin or even for the developers, is, don't wait for the functionality to go live. There's a lot of cleanup that can be done now, especially looking at existing workflows, workflows that maybe you wanted to have a record create at the end or a chatter post. It's almost like packing before you got to move. Don't wait for the moving truck to show up before you start packing. If you're ready to go, when it goes GA, then you'll have a successful rollout.
Do we have time for one more?
I think so, and it's yours.
Yeah, so really quickly, there was a question about whether we support reports for the external object feature. And in classic new feature parlance for Salesforce, I'm going to say not yet. I don't know what the roadmap is for that, but I know that the current implementation does not support reports.
And the good news is, for those sticking around, I've been told we can go over. So I know we're hanging. We're earning our bonus points on this.
There we go.
Exactly. Because people are staying on. So yay for them. I'm going to scroll through.
I'm going to throw one your way, Mike. How about that?
Please do. All right.
Is there a way to easily migrate existing related workflows into Process Builder?
Not that I know of. So
Okay.
when I built my demo, I actually, and I say this because I think it's a good thing. I actually reevaluated all the workflows. So the demo that I showed today with the 9 steps, if you go back to I think it was like July, I did a webinar on tips and tricks. One of them was creating all of those workflows. I actually wish I would have had Process Builder for that, because it allowed me to look through all of the workflow rules and say, do we need these actions? Is this something we can reevaluate, or can we build a better sales process? So right now, that's how I approached it.
Great advice.
Let's see.
So looking through a few others, this is an interesting sort of general one. I'll put this out here. Maybe we can discuss this and wrap up. A lot of people have asked me why there are so many features and new functionality that are being introduced in beta through contacting the account reps. In the past, new features were available right away. Why the change? That's a really, so that has a little bit to do with practice. And I don't know, Skip, do you want to talk a little bit about, since you're in product management, how does product management decide whether to release something directly available or into beta? Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, so we have 3 or 4 different ways we categorize pre-release. So there's dev preview, pilot, and beta. Basically, it's up to the team, the product manager, product owners, various execs to decide what to push for. And a lot of it's based upon demand. So, for example, we had a pilot for what's now known as Lightning Components, because we wanted to get several of our ISV partners up to speed quickly. Gives us a chance to get feedback, and also lets them be ready for things like Dreamforce. So the result of that pilot was we had a lot of components ready to show, and a lot of people who were experts on Lightning when we went beta. We're doing the same thing right now for Lightning extensions. It's in a pilot. Pilots also give you the ability to release something that's not necessarily going to make it into production. So anything that's in so-called dev preview or pilot could be pulled back entirely. It can be changed radically. We can change schemas. We can change APIs and that sort of thing. Once you go into beta, you're effectively saying this is near GA and will go GA at some point in a subsequent release, but it may still have some areas that are not as complete as we would like for a full GA offering. And betas also typically are driven by a pref so that the customer can opt in, as in the case with Lightning Components. So turning it on doesn't mean that you get it for everyone. For example, you saw the Canvas issue. That's due to separate domains, part of security. By giving you that opt-in feature, if you're using the Canvas features today, you don't have to turn on Lightning Components. If you want to play with them, you can create a new DE org. As you know, that's very easy to do at Salesforce. Just go create a new one, build your Lightning Components there. Once we resolve that issue and either patch the current release or include it in the subsequent release, what we call Spring 15 or 194, then you won't have that sort of restriction. And once we go GA, it'll be enabled by default, just like Visualforce, Apex, etc. Does that answer the question?
I think it does. I mean, I'll add a little bit of color. So I've never been on the. I've always been on the. I'm one of the developers on the platform. My experience has been I've seen a lot of features get introduced via beta, and it could just be that I think whether something goes kind of direct into release versus into beta probably has to do with how big a feature it is. So something that's really groundbreaking like Lightning Components is a little bit different from adding something like being able to package accounts or person accounts, right? So I imagine that has something to do with the decision too.
Very cool. So I'm going to remind everybody we're going to work through the queue on the webinar panel and get as many answers posted as we can. Of course, if you didn't get your question asked or answered during the Q&A or in the control panel, you can always go to success.salesforce.com. Skip is on there, Peter's on there, I'm on there. There's a lot of groups that you can ask your question to. And of course, we have our Twitter handles up there. You can always tweet at us, and we'll do our best to answer that question. So with that, I want to thank you for spending your Thursday pre-Halloween with us.